Welcome to ISC2 LA Beyond the Certificate podcast. I'm your host, Steve Weltman. This is your direct link to real cybersecurity career stories and insights from the ISC2 Los Angeles community. We'll explore the paths, challenges, and the wins, all to help you level up your own journey in cyber. Whether you're just starting out or looking to grow, this is where experience meets opportunities. Hey, welcome to the podcast. This is Steve Weltman. This is the ISC2 Los Angeles Behind the Certification. And this week, we have with us one of our members, David Lin. He's a CISO and currently runs the Able Advisory Services security company located in Los Angeles, California. David's a 30-year CISO. He has been in the business for a long time, just like me. I'm really excited to have him here. Welcome to the podcast, David. How are you?
Thank you, Steve. Doing fantastic.
Awesome. So today, I thought we'd do this a little bit differently. We're going to have a throwback day. We're going to go, what was my first year in cyber like? What I wish I knew. Does that sound like a fun topic?
I don't know what I'm getting into, but yes.
Okay, well, this will be easy. We'll ask questions, we'll answer questions, and if it's not a good answer, that's okay. We'll pass on that one. What we'll do with this is we'll have some fun with it. But the most important thing is we want to cover why it's important in the cybersecurity community to learn from each other and how we connect with each other. Does that work?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so what was your biggest surprise or unexpected challenge in your first year of cyber?
First year of cyber, wow. That goes 20-some years back. I was, I say, recruited into a consulting firm with Deloitte. First date, I guess I'll think back to my first project, actually. I was handed a network diagram of one of the Fortune 1000 companies and said, go study it. You have a meeting tomorrow with their enterprise network architect, and you need to tell them everything wrong with this network. So that was my going, what? And mind you, now I have a networking background. I started, building small network, crimping cables too. I understand IP addressing. I know how to set up small business for 3 people dentist office, but I have to admit, no, I've never seen a enterprise network. DMZ is still something new to me because you don't need one for a dentist office. So I'm looking at this diagram, to be candid, I don't know what I'm looking at. That was a little surprise and panic set in. And then I started looking at, so who am I meeting with? And that was, he's been a network architect for 10 years, building networks for global corporation and multiple places. And my job was actually to pick his network apart, tell him what is missing, what he needs to do better, because that's why we're there. So yeah.
Oh, those were tough conversations. I've been in similar situations. I'm a former Cisco employee from way back in 2000. Okay. So I understand exactly what you're talking about. Having a networking in my background also, if I had somebody new to the security space trying to pick apart my network, I'm going to defend it to the death. I'm sure that was a really uncomfortable conversation.
Absolutely, right? And on top of, I really don't know what I'm looking at. So yep. I phoned a friend, got lots of, people that had experience, enterprise networking experience, literally study overnight. And really, I got help, right? What am I looking at? What question do I have? What question do you see? What's wrong with this network? They're really not much, but it's a best practice, right? And again, I think now, fast forward, you could design a network, right? I mean, you have your primary, your segmentation and all of that, but if you don't know, have never seen one, it's challenging. So really the surprise, how do you deal with things that you've never seen before? And security, right. I think a lot is just never seen that problem before. Well, what do you do?
That's so true. I think one of the biggest things inside of networking, especially looking at it from the lens of NetSec, is knowing that you have other people around you that are going to help you. You brought that up, and you got help from inside of your team. How did that go? Did they? I know they knew you were the first. This is the first time in first engagement with Deloitte. So hopefully they were a little bit more gentle with you than suck it up, cupcake.
There's the. Yes. I was like, how does it you don't know? Well, I came out of grad school, right? I did program, but no, I'm not touched enterprise network. So there's an explanation, and there's I got 2 nights and 3 days to prepare for. So what do I need to do, right? Google's your friend, yes, but you can't be CCIE in 2 days. So there were a lot of learning, deep learning, and, you figure it out.
That is so true. So I think one of the things you pointed out, and I really like to bring you back to again, was how you used your community to benefit not just yourself, but the organization as a whole. And what was the end result with that? How did the client receive it?
It's not a easy or one-time conversation. So I think as we were having the conversation, of course, there's questions being asked from the client. Well, what do you mean by that? I'm like, oh, great question. Let me get back to you. I think this is some of the skill you learn, right? I call it a skill, but it's okay. Well, how do you interact at the end? It's a communication. It's okay. There's some area that I just am not familiar with. I think being truthful and being candid actually goes a long way. Especially when it comes to technical skill set and experience, you just can't make up BS that you don't know. So I was candid. It's like, well, this is my experience, and I am somewhat new to the enterprise scale, right? My background has not been in enterprise, so let me take that back and get some answer back to you. So utilizing phone a friend, right? At that time, it's just all the resources you have, and this is where I think in any career, in any position, is you have the resources around you. No one expects you to know everything. And I think that was something that I had to learn over time. No one expects you to know everything, but you need to know where to go find the answers. And that was the confidence. That was a little bit of the career that you learned over time going, oh, it's okay. Well, I don't know everything. I know enough to have a conversation, to be an expert, but I'm not the author of this RFC. So I, met some author RFC as well that had conversation that I did not know in the beginning. So lots of learning over time that, humbled by Medi. But I'm confident with, okay, well, I know how to look up things.
That's exactly right. And I really like how you reframed it, that you don't have to know everything, but you knew where to get the resources. And I think that really speaks to the main point of how the community benefits one another, not just individual opportunities. That was a really good learning experience. It's like you either perform super well, you win, or you learn, right? You found yourself in a situation that was suboptimal, but you overcame that challenge by leveraging the resources around you. And that's what I'm hoping that we could talk more about, because the IC2LA is a really important chapter in a lot of people's lives. They're looking for either their first opportunity, their next opportunity. They're looking for advice from people like us that have been in there and done it before and have seen some things, but they don't know what we don't know or what we do know. So it's really important that we help them to become finders of information and also connectors of other people too.
Absolutely. I always call it a bag of tricks, right? From my counselee to mentee to just friends, right? I always say you got to start building up your bag of tricks. Everything you get from the knowledge you have from friends, from anything, from online, keep filling the bag of tricks, because you never know. You're going to somewhere one day you're going to run into a question. The more you could accumulate in your bag of tricks, the more options you have.
That's exactly right. I think, I don't call them bag of tricks, but I agree with you. What you're saying is having all of these connections allows you to say, hey, yeah, I know Steve. He knows about certificate authorities. Speaking of which, I had the same sort of experience. I was working for a consultancy about 10 years ago or so, and they put me into a hot seat. And they said, hey, we know you're really good at certificate authorities, but we're going to take that tribal knowledge, a little bit of knowledge you have in some smaller companies, and we're going to put you in front of Blue Cross, who has 2,000 servers that they're looking to internalize their CA for. So I had to go through the process of literally architecting out their CA. And they were all Microsoft Shop, and I'm all Linux. So that had to transfer skill set. I was able to transfer the knowledge to them and not have the information about how to do the bits and bytes components of it. But again, it was like you. I had to rely on my tribe, my people, the folks around me, before I could actually be successful in that. And there was a lot of learning, a lot of redoing, and a lot of real conversations. But that's okay, because those real conversations gave me a framework to move forward in my career too.
And I actually, as you're talking, kind of reminded me, right? All the way back to the beginning. I'm thinking grad school, undergrad even. When you're learning, of course, people don't expect you to know already, and it's hard, I think, when you get out to the workforce, especially, I think consulting is tougher, right? But in any working environment, unless you're first year, whatever. But I think most of us, especially in the technology side, has that, you call it imposter syndrome, call it insecurity, whatever you want to call it, is, well, when there's a problem, I feel that I should know this, right? And I don't know what it is, but I feel like I should at least be able to raise some questions around this. But honestly, some of those scenarios, you just have no clue, like no idea what it is. So how do you react to that, right? And I think if your mindset is coming from a learning perspective, oftentimes I find that it actually helps you stay calm, first of all, right? You're not panicking, going, oh crap, I wish I know XYZ domain and worked on it for 3 years. Well, again, nobody expects you to know, but you don't think of that when you're in that situation. But if you put yourself back in that mindset and go, okay, well, hey, I'm not seeing this. I have no clue what the hell I'm looking at, but let me take a learning attitude to it, or thinking about what do I know around this topic? Who do I know? What resource do I have around this topic? Start, right? Researching, start learning, start talking to people. Then oftentimes you find that actually this is quite similar to this other domain. So-and-so gave me a couple of hints. Great. No one have the time to sit there and tutor me, right? But a couple of resources, I'm able to connect the dot. Now I am formulating my own ideas and thoughts around it, right? I just need validation. And actually I think it's the ability to learn. That's what
I love
gets you
that.
through these.
I love the way you put that out there. So the next question led naturally into that, which is your resources. Like, how did you learn? And you leveraged other people's knowledge, but you learned from probably books and journals and magazine articles and the other things that you could find, whatever technical documentation was out there on, if there was any on YouTube at the time. Definitely technical manuals. I used to immerse myself in technical manuals. That was my thing. So technical reading, technical manuals was everything for about 20 years.
I'd agree. Especially anything you implement, right? From the supplier, technology vendor perspective, they all have Q&A, they all have implementation guide, administration guide. I mean, you flip those things back and forth to the point where, okay, well, you're missing something, then you got to go open a support. Then you talk with the technology support. And that's an aspect that you learn, okay, documentation is not 100%. Then you start talking to product roadmap, a product team. That's how you then learn, okay, well, hey, here's an undocumented feature. So, and I think there's the primary learning source, I would say, is that, right? Obviously, product specs. The secondary one then is experience. And that experience, and that's where, well, you talk to people that have done it before. Teams and teammates, or just SMEs on the topic, on this technology, on that domain, is what is your experience, right? I run into this thing, or I'm experiencing this challenge. Your experience, what have you done? What approach have you done? And oftentimes, the first thing they point you, product specification. Okay, I've done that. Second thing, support. Well, I have an open ticket out. How the next one? Oh, well, I remember in my experience, this happened, it's around this area. Okay, well, let me look into that, right? So I think it's a combination of that. I think that's how I learned through a lot of the technical challenges, integration problems. That's how most of those things are resolved.
That's so true. A long time ago, I was working for a company called Lucent Technologies that came out of Bell Labs, and they were really big into documentation. It's a very mature company. AT&T turned into Bell Labs. They spun them off, and then they became Lucent. And they had this tool called ATM, Synchronous Transfer Mode, that I became the master of, the expert at. I had no formal training on this thing, so I had to spend a lot of time reading, and I had to spend a lot of time discovering and breaking things and making them work. And I didn't necessarily find the right best path, the way that they recommended, how to stand up a constant bitrate circuit all the time. But I got really good at understanding what flaws in the documentation based on how it was supposed to work, just like what you found too. And I had to work with the teams that designed the product that worded it in such a way that I didn't have context. So that helped a ton. What other communities did you use to help you refine your knowledge in your craft?
I mean, I was fortunate, I think, right, in a big consulting firm. So there's lots of internal network specialized in different topics. So, each email query could hit a couple of thousand people simultaneously. So that was extremely useful. Right? Of course, but that's within a single firm. And I think over the years, you start building your network, right, on your own, right? And you're going to meet people that, you're going to be my next ATM expert if I ever run into a problem and question now, right? It's exactly the same way that you build that and say, okay, I have few friends that I know it's identity management, incident response, there's threat intel there, right? Because people all have their own specialty area, and over the years, they tend to gravitate toward that. They tend to have the resources. They tend to have the website. They tend to have, right, the tips. And I mean, I won't say click no one. I can't keep up with everything that's growing, right? Exponentially, all that, here's a great website on this tip. Here's a great website on that. But having the network, right, those resources around you allows you to go, hey, I run into something. Well, I know who to reach out to. I know who to talk to, and that's how I'm able to keep up because it's not possible for me to sit on Google and learn on my own, right? So, really it's situational. I think it's priority based as well. And what comes back to, I think the question you're asking, the community. There's lots of community, right, out there, ISC being one of the big one and major one where cyber professionals are gathering. I think this is a great place and great area to leverage that, not just learn from what ISC has to offer, but really build your network out and, build your own personal resourcing centers.
That's so true. I think there's some other really good communities too. And just to give a quick shout out to the Cloud Security Alliance, the OWASP, the ISSA even, there are organizations that have good knowledge about different specific technical things that are in our world, in our cybersecurity space. So those are other good organizations that have people in them that have great technical specialties. And of course, there's AppSec folks, the Linux groups. The Linux user group in Los Angeles is really big. It's run by friends of mine. So there's lots of resources that are available in the community, but getting in the community, I think, is probably the most important thing. You can't isolate yourself and then expect to become the master of that particular domain because you won't see all of the use cases like you pointed out. Can I ask a more, painful question? I've had tons of these painful experiences and I hate them, but they're so useful for people that haven't been there and done that yet. What mistakes did you make that others could learn from that if you could go back and go, wow, that one was painful. I'm so glad I went through it, but I wished I hadn't had to do that first. That's a tough one, right?
This is very tough, and this is almost, I'm thinking, what's the most embarrassing thing?
Not embarrassing. No. We want to keep this above board and professional. I don't want to embarrass. But I'm thinking, technically, there's lots of stuff. Like, I blew up a network once. And just to be honest with you, that network was a national network. And it affected services across a portion of a country. Things happen. It was a 5-minute outage, and it was restored quickly. But I got a pretty good hand slap. And I learned what to let people know before I touch things.
On the technical side, I would say I'm usually very meticulous and detailed.
Yeah.
I always triple check my step, especially in the beginning of my career, right? I'm touching technology that, I had a couple of weeks of training, I'm learning as I'm implementing. So I'm always fairly careful with that. So when it comes to the mistake, usually it's not anything major. The major thing I've learned, I think, from a career perspective, I think it's more the interaction, I would say, probably, especially with email, the lack of care on email. You respond without understanding who's on CC. It's really the etiquette, if you will, right? It's respond all to a distribution of 1,000 people. You didn't realize I was going to 1,000 people. Replying to client and perhaps is meant for the internal, not for the client. And after you send, and you learn there's no withdrawal, there's no recall, right? Great that they have that feature today, but no, it doesn't really mean much, right?
That's true. Damage is done.
Is sent.
The cows are out of the barn, man.
Yeah, there's few lessons there I learned.
Yeah.
It's not just about read it carefully, but it's more, I started having a habit is any email I send.
Yeah.
In the Outlook, you could actually delay send. So then I would let it sit in a draft for an hour or two. And I find that 50% of the time, it's like 10 minutes later, go, I want to say something else.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think would go back. Yeah.
That is so important that we bring that up. And talking about communication it really comes down to that. The mistakes that we make are assuming that we have the context a lot of times. We don't always know all of the details or all of the insight. And sometimes it's really good to take a beat and go, okay, let me look at this in an hour. Let me look at this in 20 minutes. I'll go get a cup of coffee, take a quick walk. That fresh air does amazing things for your brain. And all of a sudden you're going, my tone was off. I'm glad I didn't send that, right? That's what I've learned. And also in giving advice. When I give advice, I want to make sure that I'm giving advice at the right level. I've given advice to executives that I expected that they would have the background in a service or a function or a thing that they're talking about as if they had great background and knowledge in it. And I've come to find out sometimes they really don't. They just know the buzzwords that go with it. A little bit of a trap. So I've learned to ask questions like, so tell me more about your experiences with this. And that sounds a little leading. It might sound a little bit condescending. It's not intended that way. It's intended to say, give me some insight so I can know how to respond to your point, the problem that's at hand. And I'm sure you found the same things in dealing with people.
I think that's the one thing I've been helping, right, some of the mentees is that, the ability to be able to take in perspective. That's something I myself learned just in the last few years. The more perspective you take in, the the better the decision you'll be able to make. And I'll come back, right, to what you're saying. Email is such a horrible communication tool. When you get a few hundred emails a day, you're in that
overwhelmed.
I got to respond to this. You got to respond to that. Boom, boom, boom. You're flying. You're feeling great, productive. I got 50 responses out today. If you go back to all the ones you sent the day before, if you actually go through it, you go, ooh, I was a little curt here. Ooh, I was maybe short there. Oh, well, I didn't give the full context. No wonder they reply back and say, what do you mean? And ask for clarification, right? Then you start finding is, okay, well, I could have said it better. Especially when it comes to tone. That's one thing I've learned. That's I actually really prefer in-person live. I know we have all the virtual team stuff, but even phone call is tonality, right? It's the communication. There's so much messaging that does not come across in written words.
So true.
And so that's why the whole I write an email, even as careful as I am, crafted a couple of times iteration. I wish you'll let it sit for an hour, look at it again and go, okay, I think that's exactly what I want to say.
It's hard to be short and it's hard to be precise when you're using very few words. But at the same time, you're trying not to be like running on and writing a book. I don't need to give somebody the history of timekeeping to explain that they should do this instead of do that. But at the same time, you have to have enough sensitivity to maybe they're having a bad day.
Yes.
This brings me back to what I have to do. I center myself on this, compassion. I want the very best for everyone that I work with so that when they're done with a conversation with me, they walk away, they go, I'm so glad I had that time with them. I hope for that. I don't always do that well, but I hope for it because even if you're new in the craft, even if you're new in anything you start to do, you can always bring hope or provide a positive attitude. You can always be somebody that's willing to listen and understand and to be compassionate. And it sounds so like not a professional skill, but that's the key. People are more important than stuff. And we get all fixed on that stuff because it's cool. I know how to program in Golang. Yeah, wow, big deal. So how do I relate back to my wife who needs my time? And that's more important that I spend the time with her, right?
That's a whole can of worms.
That's another can of worms. We're not going to go there. That's Pandora's box. But at the same point, it's relationships. I brought up the one that I thought of. But we have work relationships. And in those work relationships, we rely on the dynamics to be able to have open and transparent connections.
Yep.
And we have to rely on their trustworthiness that they're not going to betray our trust or hurt our feelings too many times. Because in those relationships, if we're not aware of those things and we're super good at our job, that's usually not a good thing. Your marks won't be as good during your 360 reviews as if you were somebody that's 75 or 85% is good, but you listened really carefully and you made sure you understood and you worked with them to do what's best for them. That's my perspective.
No, I love that. And I'd agree, right? You use the word compassion. I absolutely agree. Now, I use a slightly different version of it, right? Is the bring your authentic self.
Yeah, I like that.
In my beginning of the career, again, going back old school, I've always thought you need to maintain the work David and then the personal David, right? Very professional coming out as a big four, big five, what client expect, presentation, all that. So I've always, and actually on purpose, kept the two very separate because I thought that's what it's supposed to be. I was afraid, right, I have a clown at home. I can't bring that to work, to office. And so I was maintaining that for decades and then start to realize, again, this is when you say, compassion to people. Yeah, I have compassion, but I oftentimes thinking, how do I fake that? How do I pretend I care? Because they're client, I need to, right, in order to deliver it. So it was a struggle for a long time. And I, talked to other friends that has similar struggle as well, even today, in some of the, people that are talking about, right, in the cybersecurity community. What I've learned, and I think over the years, the more you could be true to yourself, they're actually easier it is. I don't have to maintain personas. I don't have to maintain perception, because then you have to manage each one differently. And when I say being your true authentic self is actually the ability that, this is who I am. I have my technical experience. I have my capability, what I bring to the table. And there's the personal side of me, what I do outside of the context of work, the context of building hours, the work environment. And actually, the more personal you get, the people actually resonate in terms of the energy, the dynamic. I'll share a good mentor that shared with me, right, that over the years is people don't do things for you because who you are. People do things for you because they like you. Pure and simple.
That's exactly right.
Especially in technology and security. We have 1,000 things going on. I could find any excuse under the sun, legitimate reason not to help you because I am not busy. I do it because, yeah, it's cool. See, we chat, I know, we're in the same realm. We're in the same community. I know you're a great person. You help others as well. So when you reach out and have a need, of course, not a problem, right? Because that value goes back and forth, that you as a person, I enjoy, we have some level of trust, right? That I know you're not going to take advantage of my whatever willingness and also, but that's the type of network that you want to be able to build. But starting with, you got to be yourself.
I love that perspective because when you're your authentic self, you don't have to put on an air. You don't have to pretend you know more than you know. You don't have to be somebody you're not. For me, I had to become a better person. I really was. I was an engineer by heart, by trade, by training, by situation, dynamics, all that stuff. And so being curt was a normal thing. And I had to retrain my brain to say, you know what? Networks are data, and data is created by people for people. And I had to really think about that, not just the etymology of what data is for and why it is around, but understanding the purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I'm connecting with people. I'm allowing them to use systems that automate processes and services that connects other groups of people. Fine, whatever that is. But I had to figure that out for me. And that brings it up. That's probably one of the most important things I learned from some of the leaders that I've seen is how to be an advocate for others and how to be kind to others. That's why I brought up compassion, because that's some of the attributes that I think of when I talk about compassion. How to advocate for others, how to be kind, even in the correction process. Hey, this isn't working. Do you think we could work on some options together? And almost everybody that's a technical person says, well, for sure there's options. The answer is never no. It's just, let's just find something that works better. And I found personally that works really well. And people that are in technology, specifically in GRC, which I'm in, when they start giving directives, they many times have the proverbial door shut on them because nobody wants to be told what to do. And that comes across as knowing more than what the expert, the SME, knows about their particular role in that context of their environment. So that's why I started to have to retrain my brain to think more compassionate terms. And I like the being authentic part too. So cool.
I put into practicality what I've learned. I think just slightly different perspective, right? I agree with everything you said. What I've learned over the career is get out of the how and stay with the what. Yeah. Right. And as you continue to progress in the career, like I said, a program manager, a leader, and, again, coming from the background that I came from, I was responsible for delivering. I was responsible for on time, on budget. So I'm very much call it a control freak. Yes, I demanded how things should be done because in my mind, that is the easiest, the shortest, the most effective, blah, blah, blah way, because that was my experience. So I expected the project team to do exactly my approach. Yeah, so I've learned that it's not a good approach. And I had to learn to back away and get out of the how. And this took learning. Because after a few times, it's okay. Well, hey, somebody took a completely different approach and came up with, even it's not exactly the same outcome, but we achieved the objective. What was the harm? And I was surprised a few times, like even better, faster than I was able in terms of the approach I was thinking. And I go, oh, it's actually better. Actually, don't need to worry about the how. And this is where empowerment comes in. Right? This is where it's not delegation, but it's joint solutioning, from a teaming perspective, from a, coaching perspective. A lot of things I learned, like I said, everything I've learned through mistakes. I've done it, made it. That's how I learned it. I'm not that smart. That's how I learned. But to what you're saying is exactly right. It's empowering the team, right? Being authentic self, give people the distance and the space, right? The compassion to think. You're actually doing them a favor because that's how they grow. If you just come in, bang on the head, here's 10 different ways I thought of how to do it. You could pick one. I'm thinking, I gave you 10 ways. What's so hard? No, just here's the objective. Go for it.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. So what advice would you give somebody that's just starting their first role in cybersecurity today?
First role.
Wow,
very specific.
Yeah, the first time that they've ever been in the field and they're new to the field and they're having imposter syndrome. I can only imagine how I felt a long time ago. I started my cybersecurity career before it was called cyber. It was just crypto gear back in the Navy in the 80s. So I think they had to chisel them out of stone back then. I'm not sure. But I imagine that somebody coming in today that comes out of a four-year school that's got a background in cybersec and maybe information technology is their love, their passion.
Or computer science or something.
Yeah, computer sci. And they're thinking, I know everything I need to know, but then they get into the real world and it's all different. Nobody works the same way. It's all different. It's all quiet. Everybody's in silos, and they don't know what to do and who to talk to.
I think a couple of things, right? But I think the easiest one is be a sponge, especially first job, first role, first whatever, right? Because even going to assuming a corporate somewhere, going to work on time, showing to a meeting on time, I have run into people that are not used to it. Right? What does it mean by showing up the client site? What does it mean by going to office by 7? Well, I usually don't get up that early for my classes. Well, learn. So from the social aspect to the technical stuff, just be a sponge. And then I think this is play well later on as, I mentioned earlier about taking different perspective. When you're a sponge, you are taking in perspectives. You are taking in, you're identifying who your resource center are. You're seeing who actually always have a good answer. Who tend to answer, who tend to provide good options, right? Doing discussions. Who's the go-to person for, certain different area. This is all just take it all in and formulate your trust center, formulate your bag of trick. Oh, who can I go to? I hear a great website. Somebody mentioned it. They always seem to know a good website somewhere. Great. I'm going to go ask them next time. So I think that's the easiest one.
All right. So I've got the last question because I know you're busy and it is Monday and you're getting your week off to a roaring start.
Yes.
What motivates you to keep going during challenging times?
Man,
I know that's a tough one, right?
Challenging times.
So when things are really tough, imagine yourself, it's your first year in your cybersec career and you're having trouble fitting in, finding out the information you need, and you're learning, and it feels really hard. It's a new thing. How do you handle the challenging times? If you were giving advice to your younger David self, what would you say and how would you do it?
Man, so many thoughts flying through right now. If it's to myself, give yourself compassion. There's just so many technology people are so hard on themselves. And I think especially so many leaders. And it's not easy to actually be nice to yourself because I think we all have this expectation of ourselves to perform, to be a perfectionist, to be the best at whatever topic. So I think one is actually when you're having a hard time, come back, give yourself the compassion and space and say, it's okay to take a break. Then I would say rethink. Come back to really some of the life question of what am I doing here? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Right? Am I on the right path? If you realize this may not be the exact path, okay, how do I pivot? How do I change? It's not going to happen overnight, but for me, that's always what helped me just kind of recalibrate. Am I in the right place? Am I going down the right path? Perhaps I see a crossroad coming up in my path. Okay, how do I prepare myself to get ready for that crossroad? Kind of recenter yourself. Those are probably the best way I could think of. The second one we talked about a lot is get your mentors. Not just one, always collect your mentors, right? Just like perspective. You're going to have some mentor who's really good at life experience, who's really good at your particular profession, who's really good at just nothing but health, right? To help you balance your mindset. But collect your mentor along the way, especially in tough times. That's the time you go, I'm having challenge with this. What do you think? What do you think? Give me some advice.
That's fantastic. That's really good advice. I would give that advice to anybody that's new into the cybersec. It's a really challenging occupation. There's so many different angles to look at this from, and that's sound advice. Be kind to yourself. Find the time to take a break. Really find somebody that knows what they're doing in the space. Not that they're a technical expert, but they can guide you in terms of how to feel about, how to experience this in a different way. Context, compassion, man. Powerful conversation today, David.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today. This is amazing content. Thank you again for your time today on Monday.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. It's actually been fun to walk back the memory lane. Some of the things that I have never shared before. So,
well, that's pretty cool. Well, thank you very much for sharing them with us. That's so cool. All right, I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, have a good one.
That wraps up another insightful conversation here on ISC2 LA Beyond the Certificate. Remember, your cybersecurity journey is a continuously evolving effort, and the IC2 Los Angeles chapter is here to support you every step. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a colleague and consider leaving us a review. For more practical insights and to connect with our vibrant community, please visit isc2la.org. Stay secure out there, and we'll see you next time.